Hello, it's time for another tidbit of news from the fantasy and science fiction community, in which I try to explain a little bit of the underlying things as to why it might matter to you as a member of that community. Or maybe you're not, maybe you're observing from afar, in which case, welcome. As always, if you're enjoying this, please hit subscribe, like, comment, all that sort of good stuff. But I wanted to talk about the fact that SFWA, the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers Association, has moved its Writer Beware website from the old Blogspot site to one with basically it's Writer Beware is the URL, and I will stick that in the description. Why is that? It's great to see that happening because it makes it so much more discoverable. Hooray for that. And because it should be discoverable, and I'll explain why. But it's also sad to see the old URL go away because it had the name of one of the founders, Ann Crispin, in it. And Ann passed away a number of years ago, but was always one of the big advocates and volunteers who worked hard with Writer Beware, another being her co-conspirator, Victoria Strauss. Together, the two of them exposed all sorts of shenanigans, because one of the sad truths about writing is that there's so many people out there who want to capitalize on dreams, and it's a shitty thing. And so luckily you have Writer Beware out there looking to expose scams, looking to expose people who are trying to extort money from writers who want to be published. And you should go read the website. Again, I'll stick the URL in the description. You should educate yourselves. So the old URL was anncrispin.blogspot. And so I'm sorry to see that go. And I just wanted to sort of salute Ann one more time for all her terrific work with Writer Beware. And I look forward to seeing what Victoria and the rest of the new volunteers, are not so new anymore, but what all the rest of the excellent folks working with it do in future years. Why is this significant enough to comment on? Well, I wanted to say salute Ann, but also I wanted a chance to proselytize a little bit, as always, for SFWA, and talk about how this is one of the things that SFWA does, is it helps educate writers. It helps. So if you have an offer, someone wrote to you and you're like, this seems really suspiciously good, is it possibly true? You can always write to Writer Beware and get them to look at it, or you can scan through the website and possibly see already the place that has solicited you is exposed there. Other things that SFWA does includes the model contracts, which I sincerely suggest that writers who are working on short stories go and read the short fiction contract. Now, why should you do that if you're not going to be creating a magazine or something? Well, that's an understandable question. But as somebody who's on the other side of those contracts, you should look at the model contract, because that model contract is glossed, which means that every clause they've gone through and said, okay, here's an explanation of what this means. Here's what's normal. Here are some danger signs. Here's some things that you should push back on. And so you should always, first, you should, in my opinion, unsolicited opinion, but you're watching my video, so maybe not unsolicited. At any rate, you should read that contract, read the clauses, understand it. And whenever you get a contract going forward, you look at it and you say, okay, here's the SFWA model contract. How well does this match? For example, one of the things that you look for is what's called a reversion clause. And I work with grievance committee on SFWA And the reversion clauses are just you want to make sure you've got one, and you want to make sure it's reasonable. So absolutely make sure that if you take nothing out of this video except for one thing, it's my contract should have a reversion clause. And what is a reversion clause? It simply states you get the rights back, and here are the circumstances under which that happens. And you want to make sure those are reasonable. They're not just like, we kept it in an electronic copy and never promoted it or anything, so we're only selling 2 copies each year, right? Which can happen if you don't sign, if you don't read contracts and only sign the ones that you understand. Okay, so again, read the contracts, understand the contracts. Don't be afraid to push back on contracts. And another reason why those SFWA model contracts exist is so you can point to them and say, hey, this doesn't match up with the SFWA model contract. Oh, look, they have boilerplate for this clause. Might I suggest that we swap this in? And most of the time, people are going to be pretty reasonable about that. If they're not reasonable about that, sometimes it may be that they're just sort of have pronounced opinions about this or whatever, but they may also be what we technically call a bad dealer, someone who's might be unethical, someone who it's a danger sign. So read the contracts, understand what are the danger signs, right? Reasonable, because we're writers and nobody's usually looking out for our money unless we've got an agent, which is super cool. But even there, the agent isn't looking at everything, at least for me. So I'm not one of the BNAs. At any rate, I will not natter on. I would just say again, hooray for Writer Beware. Thank you, SFWA, for continuing to fund that excellent program. Thank you, volunteers, for continuing to run that excellent program. If you are a writer, definitely check out this resource. And now it is even easier to find than it used to be. Amazing. Okay. Thank you. So this has been another tidbit of fantasy and science fiction and fantasy news. If you enjoyed it, please like, please subscribe, please, click the little hearts and let me know that I'm not just screaming out into the void. And let me know, has there been a place where the model contracts have been useful to you? I know I've sent them to companies or editors more than once. So let me know. Take care. Bye-bye.